Hey everybody, welcome to my gameplay video for Battalia the game. Now if you skip the how to play video, I just want to re-emphasize here really quickly that while all these components are about 90% complete, all the artwork is pretty much done here, I do have a prototype copy of the game, which means this board isn't quite sitting flat because it's kind of pretty much a prototype board. The miniatures you see, while they look pretty darn good, they're actually the kind of miniatures that are made with a 3D printer, just to give you an idea of what the actual game will look like. None of these components are completely 100% finalized, and that does mean that some of the images on these cards, the artwork is going to be finalized, but the actual little symbols for all the cards, they are being changed. They're going to put some more symbols on these cards. They're going to be much more logical and make much better sense to newer players. So some of the things you may see here are going to be a little bit different from the final prototype copy, but the whole idea of this video is just for you to see exactly how Battalia the game plays. I have the game set up for a 4-player game between the 4 elements. Every player gets their starting deck. Let's go and take everything down to the table and show you what Battalia looks like. I have the game set up for a 4-player game. I'm not using any of the advanced rules, so none of the players are going to get any bonus movements for moving onto a terrain tile that happens to match their faction. They're not going to get any combat bonuses for doing any combats on any factions matching their own race. And I just say that just to simplify things, because again, this is just a really good way just to see exactly how the game plays. So we have a 4-player game set up between all 4 of the factions. All the players have their starting decks. We have the fire people starting on this corner, the people of the water starting on this corner, the people of the air starting on this corner right here, and finally the people of the earth are going to be starting over here on this corner. The main ruins have us level 8. All the neutral cities are currently at level 4. Again, not using any of the advanced rules, and we're ready to begin. Every player starts with a hand of exactly 6 cards. Everybody's going to pick up their hand of cards, and we're going to start with the red fire player. They're the ones who are also going to control the oracle at the start of before anything on their turn, before they take their actions. They're going to make sure they advance the oracle wheel to the next day. The oracle wheel is currently set that tools is currently the one that the ray of sunshine is shining on, and it's also the one that happens to be doubly matched. And what that does mean is that if anybody buys a tool on this day, they get to pick their color, and if anybody uses a tool, not that that's going to be possible in the first round, but if anybody uses a tool, the tool is going to have double effect for this day only. So the very first thing the fire people need to do is they need to look at their hand of cards and see if they happen to have a cohort. Remember, a cohort is 3 cards of one faction matching, or at least 3 cards of one faction matching. If we happen to have at least 3 cards of one faction matching, we're going to draw 1 card, and if we have multiple cards matching, we're going to get to draw extra cards. We don't happen to have a cohort at the start of this round, so the very thing we're going to start doing first is we're going to start seeing if we got any cards that we can use to start buying more cards to increase our power. So the first thing the fire player is going to do is they're going to go ahead and they're going to play 1 chief. They're going to follow up by playing 1 Fremen, and then they're going to follow up with a 2nd Fremen. That's going to allow them to go ahead and buy an amulet. So this action chain is now locked off. There's nothing else we can do with these cards anymore. So we can go ahead and put these in our discard pile just to get them out of the way so they're not blocking our view, so you see exactly what's happening. Normally you'd leave cards out like this, but just for simplicity, I'm going to move them out of the way. Then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to play a chief. We're going to follow that up with a Fremen, and then we're going to follow that up with a supply card, and that's going to allow us to purchase a tent. We're going to buy that tent. That's going to close out the supply line, and that's going to be pretty much it for the red player. Their turn is over. Now the only thing left for them to do is to refill up their hand, and since they can't refill up their hand because they only have 4 cards left in their draw deck or in their nation, they need to shuffle up all the cards that they just put in their discard pile, or in their shelter as the game calls it. We're going to shuffle up our shelter, draw out 2 cards, and those will be the hand of 6 cards we'll have for our next round to start, and we need to start figuring out exactly what we want to start doing for our next turn. That's going to end the red player's turn. We now get to move over to earth player's turn, and they need to make some decisions about what they want to do. It's now the earth player's turn. We have our hand of 6 cards, and again, the very first thing we need to do is we need to check to see if we have any cohorts in our hand, and if we don't, we also have the option of mulligan, but we're not going to do that this early in the game because our hand of cards is actually pretty decent. We happen to have 3 Fremen in our hand. We happen to have 3 supplies in our hand. It's actually a pretty good mix of cards, especially since we have some really good ideas of what we're going to do to start our turn. So the first thing we're going to do as the earth players, we're going to go ahead and we're going to lay out 3 of our supply bags to create an action chain, which is going to be allowing us to actually purchase a unit card. So we're going to purchase a chief card. Now remember, anytime we purchase a unit card, we also have to take a supply card. That's going to close out this chain, and again, normally we leave our chains out so the players can see what we're doing, but I'm going to put these in discard pile just so things are pretty plain and pretty clean for you to see exactly what I'm doing. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and spend 1 Fremen, a second Fremen, and a third Fremen, which is going to allow us to purchase a tool. Now, since the Oracle is currently pointing, matching for tools, and also for the Sunbeam on the Oracle pointing out the tools, that means we can actually pick up the whole pile of tool cards and we get to decide what color we want to take. We need to decide in advance what color we want before we go through this deck, but we get to pick any single color that we definitely want. And since we see that our race is trying to represent the Earth people, we're probably going to want to pick up green cards, especially since we happen to have a lot of green cards in our deck. So it's not a big deal for us. We're going to simply take the top card, which is going to be a green tool card. And again, we're trying to get all of our units and all of our cards be matching colors. So that way we can start drawing more cards on our turn. That's going to be it for the cards we want to play. We're going to draw a new hand of exactly 6 cards. We only have 4 cards in our nation deck, so we do need to shuffle up our shelter. And then we're going to draw 2 more cards out of our shelter, add those to our hand, and that's going to be the end of the turn for the Earth player. It's now the turn for the air player to go. They need to draw up all 6 of the cards. And again, the first thing we need to check for is we need to see if we have any cohorts. So we're going to need to look to see if we have at least 3 cards that happen to match the current faction that we may have in our hand. We say we have 2 blues, which is the water. We have 1 yellow, which is the air. So we don't currently have a cohort. So now we need to figure out exactly what we're going to do with all the cards we have in our hand. So the air player, for their turn, they're going to go ahead and lay out one of their chiefs. They're going to put out one of their Fremen. And they're going to put out a second Fremen, which is going to be enough units to purchase their first weapon. They're going to have the weapon to the action line, which is going to close out this action line. And again, I'm going to put this over in the discard pile just to make things nice and simple. That's going to go ahead and leave us with 3 supply cards left over. We're going to take all 3 of those supply cards and we're going to go ahead and buy the top unit. Remember, unit cards always come with a supply of their own. That's going to close out that action line. That's going to be it for the air player. They're going to draw a new hand. Remember, we should only have 4 cards, so we're going to have to shuffle our shelter to get the extra 2 cards we're going to need to form our hand, and all the rest of the cards are going to form our nation, which is our draw pile. We now have a hand of 6 cards, and it's now time for the water player to take their turn and figure out exactly what they want to do. The next thing we need to do is we need to look at our hand of cards and see if we have a cohort by looking for cards that all happen to be of the same faction. We don't have a cohort in our hand, so we need to look at our cards and figure out exactly what we want to do for our turn. We do see that we happen to have a chief, we happen to have a Fremen, and we also happen to have 4 supply cards, so it's pretty much easy what I think I'm going to do here. I'm going to take the supply plus the chief plus the Fremen, and I'm going to go ahead and purchase our very first tent. That'll close off this supply line. That's going to do 2 things. First of all, tents are cool because it allows us to store cards there. The other cool thing is this tent happens to match the faction that we want to go to for the water player. That's going to leave us 3 supply cards left over. We're going to look at everything we got here. And normally I would say we're going to go ahead and take one of the chiefs, but I think instead of that, we're actually going to take one of the Fremen, because again, it matches our faction. He's going to come with 1 supply card. That actually leaves us with 1 supply card left over. We're not going to use that. We're going to discard all the remainder of our cards. We're going to draw a new hand of cards, which means we need to shuffle our shelter to get 2 more cards and to also form our next nation deck, and we're now ready to end that turn. We move back over to the fire player, who needs to start everything off by advancing the Oracle wheel. And now we see that the weapons are going to be highlighted by the sunshine, which means all weapons are now double power. And we also see that if anybody happens to buy a scroll, they get to dig through the deck and get the color of the faction that they want. It's now the red player's turn, or the fire people's turn. So we draw our hand of cards and we look at all the cards that we currently have in our hand. And again, the first thing we want to check for is to see if we happen to have any cohorts. And it looks like this round we happen to have 1 cohort because we have 3 cards in our hand that happen to have all the same faction. So we're going to draw 1 more card and we're going to add a Fremen to our hand of cards. And now we need to figure out exactly what we want to do for our turn. First thing we're going to do is look at all the cards, and we're going to see that we have an amulet. So let's go ahead and see just how lucky we can get and see if we can go ahead and make one of our Fremen more powerful and see if they're going to start pulling a little bit more extra weight on their turn, relying on the luck of the dice. And we're going to get lucky and we're going to roll a 3, which means that this Fremen is now triple power, which means he's actually equal to 3 Fremen. So now we definitely know exactly what we're going to do on our turn. We're going to take all 3 of those Fremen. Well, we don't need all 3 of them, but we definitely need 2 of them. And we're going to go ahead and play those Fremen with this card right here, this priest card right here, which is going to allow us to buy a weapon, which we're going to add, and that's going to end off this chain right here. So we're done with that. I'm going to take all these cards again, put them in the discard pile so they're out of the way. And we still have a couple cards left over that we can do some things with, so we need to make another decision based on the fact that we have a tent, 2 Fremen, and 1 supply card left in our hand here to make some good decisions with. I think what we're going to do with the fire player, though, is we're going to go ahead and play the tent down. We're going to use the supplies to pay for the tent. And we're going to go ahead and put one of our Fremen in that tent, meaning that we can use him on a future turn, which could be very, very beneficial for us. We're going to go ahead and discard the rest of our hand. And then we're going to draw back up to 6 cards. We only have 5 left in our nation, so we are going to have to shuffle our shelter to get a 6 card to form our hand. And now that's going to end the turn for our fire player. We now move back over to our earth player, who has a hand of 6 cards and some decisions to make. It's now the earth player's turn, so we look at our hand of 6 cards, and the first thing, again, we're going to look for is to see if we have a cohort. And we do happen to have a fire cohort, and even though that we happen to be the earth people, we can still get a cohort if we have enough cards of the right faction. We're not always looking for cards of our faction. We're looking for cards of our faction when we're doing combat and stuff like that, but when we're looking for cohorts, any faction will do. So we see that we have 3 fire faction guys. That does mean we have 1 small cohort. That does mean we get to draw 1 more card into our hand. And now we need to decide exactly what we want to do based on the cards we have in our hand and all the options available to us right now. Well, we see that what we're going to do is we're going to take advantage of the Oracle Wheel right now. First thing we're going to do is we're going to play down a priest. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to play down a chief. And then we're going to play down a Fremen. That's going to allow us to purchase our very first scroll. Closing out this line, now the nice thing about these scrolls is these scrolls are going to allow us to start changing the factions of any card we happen to play on top of them. So we start making sure that we're getting all the cards of the factions that we definitely want into our nation. We have 3 supply cards left and 1 Fremen card left. Let's see what we can do with those cards. The Earth player thinks this is a darn good time to start doing some expansion, so we're going to go ahead and play 1 Fremen down and 1 supply card down, and then we're going to go ahead and take either this 2-road section or this 2-road section, depending on exactly what we want to do. We're going to go ahead and take this 2-road section because remember, we're not playing with the advanced rules, and we're not too concerned about having certain terrains close to our cities that may give our enemies advantages. We're going to place this terrain down like this. That's going to leave us 2 supply cards left over. Nothing we really want to do with those supply cards, so we're going to discard the rest of our hand, draw back up to 6 cards, and that's going to be the end of the turn for our earth player. We now get to move over to the air player and their full hand of cards and exactly what they want to do. It's now the air player's turn. We're going to look at our hand of cards. First thing we're going to do is look for a cohort. We don't happen to have one, so we're pretty much going to fall in the way of the earth people here. We're going to go ahead and play out a priest first. We're going to go ahead and play out a chief next, and we're going to play out a Fremen, and we're going to go ahead and take a scroll. Now, since we are the air people, we want to try to get the air cards, and since currently scrolls are the magic thing that the Oracle is pointing towards, as a match, we can go through here and call out a faction color, and if it's in the deck, we get to take it into our hand. Well, we're the air people, we're going to look for an air card, so we're going to grab the first gold card we see, take it into our hand, part of our action line, place it down there like that. That's going to close our action line. We still have 3 cards left in our hand. We have 3 supply cards. We're going to go ahead and take 1 chief. He's going to come with his own supply. That's going to be our total hand, our total actions for this turn. That's going to be the air player's turn. We get to draw back up to 6 cards in our hand, leaving 1 card in our nation, and our turn is over. We're now at the water people's turn. Again, the first thing we do is look for a cohort. We have 2 blue, we have 2 green, and 2 supplies. No cohort, unfortunately, here. But we do happen to have 3 Fremen, so what we're going to do is we're going to play out all 3 of our Fremens in a row. We're going to use all 3 of them to purchase a tool. Now, unfortunately, the tools is no longer the special item that's going to give us the extra bonus of digging through the deck. So we do have to take the top tool, which is going to be green. Not quite our color, but that's okay. We now have 2 supplies left, and we also happen to have 1 priest left. Not much we can do with those, but we can purchase 1 more Fremen, and I think that's actually what we're going to do. We're going to play out both the supplies, pick up 1 of the Fremen. Again, he's going to come with his own supplies. This card is a card we're not going to use at all. That's going to end our turn. We're going to draw 6 cards out of our nation, leaving 1 card in our nation. This is the hand for the next round for the water people. It's now the end of the 2nd round of the game. We need to advance the Oracle Wheel, and it's now time for the fire player to start their turn for the 3rd round. We're now on the fire player's turn. We've already advanced the wheel, so what we're going to do is look at our hand, look for any cohorts. We definitely don't have any, but our weapon has come up to the top of our deck. So we're going to go ahead and play out 1 weapon plus 2 supplies. That's going to allow us to bring out our very first hero onto our city, and we're going to bring our hero out onto the board. Now we do happen to have one priest left over, and we happen to have 2 supplies. We could use these 2 supplies to pick up our Fremen, but remember, this is a deck building game. One of the biggest traps you ever fall to in a deck building game is overclogging your deck with cards you don't necessarily need. Well, you may think you need them. You always want to be as efficient as possible, so we're going to discard the rest of our hand. We didn't take this Fremen out of our tent because we want to keep them here for a better play of our cards. This is our discard pile. We're going to simply draw a hand of 6 new cards. We only have 5 cards left over, so we do need to go to our shelter, shuffle up some cards for our shelter, grab our 6th card for our hand. That's the end of our turn. It's now back to the Earth People. We're now on the Earth People's turn. We got our hand of cards. Again, first thing we always check is make sure we have any cohorts. We don't have any cohorts. But what we do have is one of our tools that's happened to come back up into our hand. Now remember, the nice thing about a tool is one tool is equal to 2 Fremen. And if we happen to have 2 Fremen or 1 tool, plus we also happen to have one of our chiefs, we can build a weapon. Weapons allow us to bring our heroes on the board, and weapons allow us to attack the other players. So weapons are very cool cards to always have. So we're going to go ahead and play 1 chief, 1 tool. We're going to go ahead and buy the top weapon from the stack here. And actually, instead of drawing the top weapon from the stack, we're going to see that the Oracle is currently pointing as matching towards the weapons. That does mean that we can actually go through a stack and pick out the weapon color that we really want. We know we want green, so we're going to call out for green, take a green weapon out of the stack, making our decks much more efficient. We still have some cards left over. We're doing a great job of expanding across the game board. So let's go and put these in our discard pile. Let's play 1 Fremen plus 1 supply. Let's go and build some more roads onto the board and see what we can do about expanding our empire across the board so we can start winning the game. Still 2 supplies left over. We could purchase that 1 Fremen. It is green, and I think we're actually going to go ahead and purchase him. Even if he is a green Fremen, he'll come with the supplies. We've played all of our cards pretty darn efficiently. That's the entire turn for our green player. Now we need to shuffle up our deck, get a brand new deck of cards, and see what kind of hand we're going to have for the next round. It's now the air player's turn. Again, first thing we need to do is look to see if we have any cohorts in our hand. We don't, but we definitely have a chief. We definitely have 2 Fremen. We definitely are going to purchase this weapon. Now, since the Oracle is mentioned, we could dig down deep and pick any color we want, but since we're the air people, and we're trying to go for the air faction cards, we're definitely going to take the top card. That ends this action line for us right there. That's going to go in our discard pile. That does leave us with 3 cards left over. We happen to have a weapon, and we happen to have 2 supplies, which means we are also bringing one of our heroes onto the board. That does end the turn for the air player. We need to drop our new hand of cards. Only 1 card left in our nation, so we need to shuffle our shelter, draw 5 new cards, and that's going to be the end of the turn for the air player. And we get to move on to the water player and their turn. For the water player's turn, we check to see if we happen to have any cohorts. We definitely don't have any cohorts right now. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and play one of our Fremen. We're going to play one of our supply cards. Sorry about that. We're going to go ahead and build a road, add it down onto the board. Then we're going to go ahead and play 3 supply cards, which is going to allow us to purchase 1 chief. We have 1 card left over. We're not going to use it. We're going to go ahead and discard it with the rest of our cards. We're going to draw a new hand. We only have 1 nation card left over in our deck, so we need to shuffle our shelter, draw 5 new cards. That's going to end our turn. We're going to advance the Oracle wheel, start the new turn with a fire player, and now the new Oracle wheel matching is anybody who plays one of these cards right here is going to be at a double strength, and the current matching card is a tent. So if anybody purchases a tent, they get to dig through the stack and pick a card of the color that they prefer. It's now the fire player's turn. We're going to look at our hand of cards, and first thing we need to do is check to see if we happen to have a cohort in our hand. We don't have any cohorts in our hand, so we don't get to draw any extra cards. So now we need to figure out our actions for the turn. For now, what we're going to do is we're going to leave our Fremen in our tent. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and play out 2 Fremen in a row, plus one of our supply cards, which is going to allow us to build a road. We're going to grab one of these 3 section roads right here, and we're going to place it right here like that. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to play out the amulet. And then we're going to go ahead and play a chief on top of it. And we're going to hope we're going to roll a 2 or a 3. Will give us about a 1 in 3 chance of rolling what we need to succeed. We're going to roll a 5. which means the card we place on top of the amulet is going to be discarded to our shelter, doing absolutely nothing for us. So our plan of upgrading our city is going to basically fall apart. That's pretty much going to be the end of the fire player's turn. There's not much else we can do on our turn. We're going to discard all of our cards, draw a hand up of 6 new cards. Looks like we do need to shuffle our shelter because the red player is being very efficient with their deck forming and making sure they're not getting a lot of junk cards on their hand, making some very efficient turns. So they're doing pretty darn well. That's going to be the end of the fire player's turn. We now move over to the earth player and their hand of cards. And the first thing we need to do is look for a cohort. We're going to see that we have 3 green cards, which is more than enough to form a cohort. We're going to draw 1 more card, giving us 3 supplies and 4 other cards in our hands to start taking some actions. So the first thing the earth player is going to do, they're going to go ahead and play out their weapon, followed by 2 supply cards, which is going to bring out one of their heroes onto the board. The next thing they're going to do is they're going to play 1 chief, 1 Fremen, and 1 supply, which is allowing them to purchase a tent. Now normally, since the Oracle wheel is matching up for tents, I could technically dig through there and pick the color I want, but I already know that I want green, so we're going to go ahead and take this green tent and add that to our supply. And both of these chains are closed off, so I'll just go and toss these in our discard pile really quick. That's going to leave us 1 card left over. We have a scroll. Now the ability of the scroll is if we place any card on top of it, we can change the faction of that card. Well, the cool thing about the scroll is it can basically change the faction of itself if you like. So we're going to use the scroll on itself, and we're going to go ahead and take a green scroll. Again, we're optimizing our deck and making it much more efficient, trying to get as many cards of the same faction into our deck as we can as possible, because that's going to allow us to draw more cards on our turn, doing more things and getting more abilities. That's going to end the green player's turn. We now get to move over to the air people who get to make some decisions. The air player doesn't have a cohort, so the thing we're going to do is we're going to play down a chief. We're going to play down one of our Fremens. We're going to play down a supply, and that's going to allow us to go ahead and take the top 10. But again, the Oracle is matching up, so we're going to go ahead and pull out the color that we choose or the faction we choose. We're the air people. We're going to choose the air faction, so we're going to go through this until we get a tent matching our faction that we like. We're going to shuffle these up. And I believe I forgot to do that earlier, but every time you dig through these decks, you are supposed to shuffle these decks up. So if I forgot to do that, I apologize. But this is, again, just a rough overview of how the game plays, just to give you an idea of the gameplay. That's going to end up taking care of this action line for us. We do have 3 cards left in our hand, but there's nothing we want to do with these cards. Again, we don't want to clog our decks up with a whole bunch of junk. You always want to look for taking actions that are going to be most beneficial for you instead of taking half decent actions, which aren't going to help you that much. It's going to give us a brand new hand of 6 cards. That's going to end our turn. We're going to move on to the water people, and we need to figure out exactly what we want to do for the water people after we check to see if we have a cohort in our hand. And it does look like we have 3 cards of the matching faction, so we'll go ahead and draw our 7th card right now, and we'll take our turn. And this is a good time to let you know and remind you that if we draw another card that matches our faction, we don't keep drawing cards. We only check for a cohort 1 time. So even though we have 4 cards, we're not going to get another card, so let's go ahead and see what we can do with all the cards in our hand. The first thing we're going to do as the water people is we're going to go ahead and play 1 tool, which is equal to 2 Fremen. Then we're going to play 1 more Fremen, which is going to be a total of 3 Fremen. Now we could use all that to go ahead and take another tool if we liked, but instead of doing that, we're actually going to go ahead and build our very first city. We're going to go ahead and take one of these cities right here, and we're going to place the city down like this. Remember, the city has to be placed in a legal formation. And you know what? Actually, what the heck? Let's go ahead and take one of those 4-way junction cities just to be very cool, to give us lots of room to expand. And since we built it with Fremen and tools, it's going to be a level 1 city. That's going to be it for the building of the cities for us. The next thing we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to play out 1 chief plus 2 more Fremen, which is going to allow us to purchase our very first weapon, which means that we can start getting our heroes on the board. We have 2 cards left over. Nothing really can or really want to do with those cards. We're going to throw those in our discard pile, draw a hand of 6 brand new cards, put the rest of our cards down of our nation, and that's the end of the turn for the water player. We're going to advance the Oracle wheel, move over to the fire player, and the next day. I think you got a rough understanding of how the gameplay goes, so I'm going to go ahead and speed things up a little bit and go through some more turns just so you can see the actual gameplay for the game. So we're starting with the fire player's turn. We have our full hand of cards. We don't have any cohorts at all. What we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and take the Fremen off our stack right here, which means the tent is going to go away. We're going to go ahead and play our weapon down in an action line. We're going to go ahead and add 2 more supplies to that action line. That's going to allow us to buy 1 more weapon. Sorry, 1 more hero. We're going to use 1 of our supplies to go ahead and move 1 of our heroes over into the next area of the land board. And then we're going to go ahead and play one Fremen, and then we're going to play one supply, which will allow us to build one more road. We're going to add one more road onto the board. We have one card left over. That's going to be it for our player's turn for the fire player. Fill out a discard pile. Draw a new hand of cards. We need to shuffle up our shelter. We now have a hand of 6 cards. Our turn's over. It's now back over to the Earth player. For the Earth player's turn, we're simply going to go ahead and play one Fremen down the board. We're going to add one tool. That's a total of 3 Fremen total, which is enough for us to build a city. It starts off as a level 1 city. We're done with that action. The next thing we're going to do is spend one Fremen plus one supply, which will allow us to build a road. We're going to use that road to go ahead and connect these 2 cities. Then we're going to make another action line. We're going to use one of our supplies to go ahead and move our hero one space over. We have one card left over. We're not going to use it. Toss in our discard pile. We're going to draw a new hand of cards. Unfortunately, we only have 4 cards left over in our nation. Need to shuffle up our shelter. Draw 2 more cards. We have our new hand of cards for the next round. We're done. It's now over to the air player. For the air player's turn, we're simply going to go ahead and play a supply card, a second supply card, and a third supply card. We're going to go ahead and buy a chief. It matches our faction, so it's a good card to have. It has a 2 attack, so since we see that everybody's starting to move across the board and some action is going to start happening pretty darn quick, we definitely want to be ready for that. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to play a chief, a Fremen, a supply, and we're going to go ahead and purchase a tent. Not in our faction color, but we're not going to worry about it because we need to get at least one tent. So we start controlling exactly what kind of cards we're getting into play. Simply draw a hand of new cards. We need 1 card out of our shelter. Shuffle it up, form our new nation. Draw a card. We now have a hand of 6 cards. Air player's turn is now over. We now get to move over to the water people. For the air player's turn, we don't have any cohorts at all, so we're simply going to go ahead and play out 5 supply cards. Get a lord. Add that all to your discard pile. We have 1 card left over. We're not going to bother with it. Discard it. We need to draw a brand new hand of cards. Only have 3 cards left in our nation. We need to shuffle up our shelter. Draw 3 new cards. The rest of the cards are going to form our nation for the next turn. We now have a full hand of cards. This day is over. We get to advance the Oracle wheel 1 space over, and it's now back to the fire player's turn. It's the fire player's turn. We're going to go ahead and lay out our amulet, and hopefully we're going to get a little bit of luck and roll for the Fremen. What we're hoping for here is we're going to get a 2 or a 3, and if we do, we're going to be in good shape. If we don't, we need to start making another decision for our turn. We got a 2, and the 2 isn't quite exactly as high as we wanted to. We would hope for a 3, but since we got a 2, that's still good enough. We're going to take that 2, which is double this Fremen, so he's now effectively 2 Fremen. We're going to add 1 more, so we now have 3 Fremen. We're going to use all 3 of those Fremen to build a level 1 city. Adding it to the board, and then it gives us 1 more city to play around with, and then we're going to go ahead and use some more of our actions. We're going to go ahead and play 1 supply card, move him over 1 space over here. Play another supply card, moving this hero 1 space over here like that. We have 1 card left over. Not going to use it. Put it in our discard pile. Need to draw a hand of 6 new cards. 1 card left in our nation. Fire player's turn's over. It's now back to the Earth player's turn. For the Earth player's turn, we do notice that we happen to have a cohort. We have 3 cards that happen to match the same faction. So we're going to draw a 4th card, giving us a scroll. We have some tools, a Fremen, a tent, 2 supplies, and we also have 1 priest in our hand to start making some decisions. First thing we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to play out 1 of the tools, play out 1 of the Fremen. That equals 3 total right there. We're going to go ahead and build a city. And we're going to go ahead and take this city right here. It's a level 1 city. Since we used effectively 3 Fremen to build it, so now the green player already controls 3 cities. And remember, the victory condition for the game is the very first player who gets 5 level 4 cities is going to win the game. We already have 3 cities, and we're working towards conquering 1 more city to make things even better for us at this stage of the game. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and play out this green scroll right here, and we're going to go ahead and use it on this priest right here, and we're going to look for a green priest. Fortunately, we already know there's one on top. Oops, if I happen to go to the priest, we're going to go through, grab a priest, grab one that's the right level. We're going to shuffle the rest of the unit cards since the amulet transmuted him into the faction that we wanted. Play these cards back out here. We now have a level 3 or a priest in our faction color. We still have a couple cards left in our hand. We could technically still use this card if we wanted to, or what we can do is just use the cards we have left in our hand to start making some decisions. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to play a supply card, go ahead and move our hero 1 space. Play another supply card, move our hero 1 more space. We have a tent left over, no way to supply the tent and pay for it. That's going to end our turn. We're going to draw a hand of 6 new cards. Still have cards left in our nation. We have a hand of 6 brand new cards. We're done for the Earth player's turn. It's now the Air player's turn to start making some decisions. It's the Air player's turn, and they're starting to realize that the Earth player is starting to encroach on them very, very quickly. So they better start doing some decisions to either expand quickly or better start playing a little bit defensively. Meaning they definitely want to get some tents out there. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to play a scroll, and then we're going to go ahead and put a chief on top of it. The thing we're going to look for is we're going to look for an air card to replace that. So we're going to call out air, dig through, grab the very first air guy we find, put the other guy down at the bottom of the deck, shuffle everything back up again, lay it off to the side. We still have a couple cards left in our hand to do things with. We're going to take one of our tents, pay a supply to pay for the tent, place this guy inside the tent so he's ready on later turns. We're going to discard the supply card right here. No use for it right now. Draw a hand back up of 6 cards. We're done. We have a card in our tent ready to fight any battles. It says 3 strength warriors, so not too bad to help defend us if we get attacked by the Earth player. That's the end of the Air player's turn. It's now for the Water player turn to figure out what they want to do. The Water player's turn. Don't have any cohorts. We're not that lucky, so the first thing we're going to do is play out the tent, play out the supply to pay for it. We're going to go ahead and put this Lord inside the tent so we at least have a level 4 guy off to the side if we need to defend our city since we don't have any heroes out yet. Then we're going to spend the other 3 cards we have remaining. We're going to go ahead and purchase a scroll, which is going to allow us to start optimizing our deck because you'll notice that the Water player has not had much luck getting cards all of the same color, making him get better draws like the Earth player and the Fire player has been lucky enough to do so far. So we want to start optimizing our deck so we're doing a little bit better on that front. We're going to draw a new hand of cards. That's going to end the turn for a Water player. We're going to advance the Oracle wheel one more day, pick up our hand of cards, and we're ready to start the Fire player's turn. For the Red player's turn, the first thing we're going to do is play out a Fremen and a supply, which is going to allow us to build a road. We're going to build a curving road right here. We're going to place the road down just like that. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to play a supply, lay out a tent, put our weapon inside the tent. That way we're ready to start attacking some cities. 1 card left over. We're going to go ahead and discard that card. Draw a hand back up of 6 cards. Fire player's turn is done. It's now ready for the Earth player. It's now the Earth player's turn. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to spend 1 supply card. We're going to go ahead and move our hero into this neutral city. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and play a weapon to initiate an attack. Now the city has level 4 on its strength, so we need to do at least 5 total attack strength to take this city over because remember, defender wins ties. So right now we have 1 attack strength. We see that the weapon is not currently highlighted, so the weapon is not double strength right now. So we got 1 strength plus 2 is going to be a total of 3 strength. And then to that we're going to add 2 more strength, which is going to be a total of 5 strength. More than enough to take out the city. And since we captured this neutral city, it's going to stay at the level we captured at. We now have 1 level 4 city plus 3 level 1 cities. The Earth player is currently 1 city away from having enough cities to possibly win the game if they can start leveling up all the cities they have. We have 2 cards left in our hand. We have a supply card and we have a Fremen card left in our hand. We could build another road if we wanted to. And I think that's exactly what we're going to do is we're going to build a road directly straight across kind of road, which is going to allow us to start moving towards the artifact. Because if we get towards the ruins, attack the ruins, do at least 9 total attack strength, we can start taking one of these artifacts, meaning that the green player is going to have 1 heck of an advantage over the other players if they don't start advancing, start making some very good decisions, and start expanding, unlike the air player who's been staying very timid. The water player who's been kind of doing a weird thing right here. The only competition for the green player right now is the fire player who is also starting to expand very, very quickly. Draw a new hand up. 5 cards left in our nation, so that does mean we need to shuffle our shelter. Shuffle it up, draw a card. We now have a full hand of cards for the next round. It's now the end of the Earth player's turn. It's now over to the air player who needs to start making some really good decisions because their defensive play is not helping them at all. The air player for their turn, they're going to throw out a supply card to put out a tent to go ahead and put a weapon inside that tent. And now we have 2 tents occupied with 2 cards that'll very much help us in case we need to pull cards into our hand very, very quickly. That's going to leave us with 1 chief and 2 supply cards, which is more than enough to go ahead and buy a horse. So if we start building land, this does mean we can start moving across the board very, very quickly. That's going to be the end of the turn for the air player. We've done 2 things. One, we've emptied out our cards of our deck of cards we don't need right now. Because the cards we need right now is we need tools and we need Fremen so we can start building roads, start building cities, and start unboxing ourselves from this little corner that we put ourselves in by not playing too efficiently at the start of the game. That's going to be the end of the air player's turn. We're now over to the water player and our hand of cards. It's the water player's turn. We're looking at hand. We do have a small cohort, so we're going to go ahead and draw one card, drawing a supply card. We're going to go ahead and use one weapon plus 2 supply cards to go ahead and bring a hero onto the map for us. Then we're going to go ahead and spend 2 Fremen plus 1 supply card, and we're going to go ahead and build a road so we make sure we're not getting ourselves trapped here where we can't do anything at all. We're going to add a road onto the game board. That's going to be it. We have 1 card left over. We're not going to use it. We're going to toss in our discard pile and draw a brand new hand of 6 cards. That's all we had left in our nation. That's going to be it for the water player's turn. We now move over to the fire player after we advance the oracle wheel. You've now seen a full 7 rounds of what the game looks like. A little bit of combat. You haven't seen combat between different units yet, but that'd be the difference between making this like a 30 to 45 minute video all the way up to maybe an hour video. It's going to be about an hour before the players are going to start really attacking each other as the land starts being condensed, as the players start optimizing their decks. And I think I've given you enough of a view to see exactly what the gameplay looks like. As you can see, there's a little bit of a build up the way the game goes. It starts off pretty small with all the players kind of in their own little corner of the world, especially in a 4-player game. But as the players start getting the cards in their hands, things start rolling very, very quickly, and you're going to start seeing that there's going to be a lot of interaction between the players as they start going through things. Things aren't out for any of our players here in this game at all. We know the red player has a weapon held back in their tent, and they also happen to have 2 heroes on the board, so the green player isn't smart and doesn't get a second hero to back them up very, very quickly. The red player can come over here, create the land they need to connect to the ancient ruins, which is allowing them to connect to all the green players' lands, and come over here and sweep across all these very weak cities that are not very well protected. The green player is not very smart. So things are still looking good for the red player. The green player can also play smart by getting another hero out there to prevent that exact same thing from happening. The blue player can start expanding and start trying to take out any holes that the red player is getting if they leave themselves open and exposed on the back end half, especially if the red player isn't watching what the other players do. The only player who needs to start worrying about things is the air player over here, who has been playing extremely defensively, which is definitely not a good way to play, especially with 3 very aggressive players. I hope you enjoyed this gameplay for Battalia, giving you a rough idea of how the gameplay looks. Stick around for my final review of the game coming up soon.